School lockdowns are terrifying enough without adding a layer of the unexplainable. Today, we're diving into 3 true stories from students and teachers who experienced something truly bone-chilling while hiding in their classrooms. These aren't just stories about lockdowns. They're about what happens when the silence is broken by something that shouldn't be there. So, lock your doors, turn down the lights, and let's get into it. Our first story comes from a high school that was practicing a routine lockdown drill, or at least they thought it was a drill. The announcement came over the intercom, teachers locked their doors and students huddled in corners away from the windows. It was all standard procedure. But then, things got weird. A few minutes into the silence, they started hearing it. Footsteps. Slow, heavy footsteps echoing in the supposedly empty hallway. A teacher, positioned near the door, peered through the small security window but saw nothing. The hall was completely deserted. Yet, the footsteps continued, getting closer and closer. Then, the doorknob began to jiggle. It wasn't a frantic, panicked shake, but a slow, deliberate turn. The students held their breath, their hearts pounding in their chests. The knob rattled again, harder this time, followed by a heavy thud against the door, as if someone had thrown their shoulder into it. The teacher quickly checked her phone for any updates from school administration. Nothing. No alerts, no messages. The footsteps moved on, and they heard the same thing happen to the next classroom door down the hall. A jiggle, a turn, and a heavy push. This continued all the way down the corridor. The students and teachers were terrified, convinced an intruder was systematically checking every single door. After what felt like an eternity, the all clear was given. The teachers cautiously opened their doors, expecting to see police officers or at least the principal. But there was no one. The hallways were empty. Later, when the school reviewed the security footage from the lockdown, their blood ran cold. The cameras showed the hallways were completely empty for the entire duration of the drill. There was no intruder, no person walking the halls. Yet the footage clearly showed the doorknobs turning and the doors shaking, one by one, as if an invisible force was trying to get in. The school never explained it, and the students who were there that day still talk about the ghost that walked their halls. Now, let's move on to our second story, which takes us to a middle school during a real lockdown. This wasn't a drill. A serious threat had been reported nearby, and the school went into immediate lockdown. One group of students was ushered into a small, windowless supply closet by their teacher. It was cramped and stuffy, and the only light came from the teacher's phone. They sat in absolute silence, listening for any sign of danger. But the sounds they heard weren't coming from the hallway. They were coming from above. It started as a faint whisper, almost like the sound of air moving through the ventilation system. But then, the whispers became clearer. They sounded like voices, multiple voices, murmuring just on the edge of hearing. The students looked at each other, their eyes wide with fear. Was it just their imagination? The teacher put a finger to her lips, straining to listen. That's when one of the students, a girl named Emily, gasped. "Did you hear that?" she whispered, her face pale. "It said my name." The other students started to panic. One by one, they claimed to hear their own names being whispered from the vents. David, Jessica, Michael. The voices were soft, eerie, and they seemed to know exactly who was hiding in that closet. The teacher tried to rationalize it, suggesting it was just the wind or the building settling, but the whispers were too distinct, too personal. It felt like something was in the vents with them, crawling through the darkness above their heads, calling out to them. They were trapped in that tiny room for almost an hour, forced to listen to the disembodied voices taunting them. When the lockdown finally ended, they burst out of the closet, relieved to be back in the light. The police cleared the school and found nothing. No one was ever found inside the building, and certainly no one was hiding in the ventilation system. But for those students, the memory of those whispering voices calling their names from the darkness remains a terrifying reminder of their time in that closet. Our final story is perhaps the most visually unsettling. This one took place during an afternoon lockdown in a high school. Like the others, the announcement was sudden. Teachers locked their doors, pulled down the blinds, and instructed students to hide under their desks. As they settled into the tense silence, something unexpected happened. The power went out. The entire school was plunged into near-total darkness, with only the faint emergency lights in the hallway casting long, eerie shadows. In one classroom, the teacher, a man named Mr. Harrison, positioned himself near the door to keep watch. He was trying to keep his students calm, telling them that power outages were common and everything was fine. But he didn't feel fine. The sudden darkness had amplified the fear in the room. He peered through the reinforced glass window in the door, trying to make out anything in the dimly lit hall. And then he saw it, a figure. It was tall and impossibly thin, a silhouette moving with an unnatural speed. It didn't walk. It glided past the doorway, a fleeting shape of pure darkness against the faint glow of the emergency lights. It was there for only a second, but the image was burned into his mind. It had no discernible features, no face, no clothes, just a void in the shape of a person. He blinked, thinking his eyes were playing tricks on him in the dark. He held his breath and kept watching, but the figure didn't return. A few moments later, the main lights flickered back on, flooding the classroom and hallway with bright, sterile light. Everything was normal again. The hallway was empty. Mr. Harrison never told his students what he saw, not wanting to frighten them further. When the lockdown was lifted, it was revealed to be a false alarm. But Mr. Harrison could never shake the image of that dark, gliding figure. Was it a shadow? A trick of the light? Or did something else use the cover of darkness and fear to wander the halls of that school? He doesn't know, and frankly, he doesn't want to. These stories show that sometimes the real fear isn't just what's on the other side of the door, but the things we can't see or explain. Have you ever experienced something creepy during a lockdown? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed these chilling tales, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more spooky content. Stay safe out there.